15 gospel legends you didn't know were gay. It's no secret that gospel music has given us some of the most powerful voices in history. Artists whose songs lifted spirits, stirred souls, and left behind a legacy of faith, talent, and inspiration. But what if I told you that behind the harmonies and hallelujahs, some of these beloved gospel legends carried a truth the public rarely heard? These are the voices that moved millions, yet lived with a part of their story hidden in the shadows. In this video, we're pulling back the curtain to reveal the untold journeys of 15 gospel icons you may never have known were gay. James Cleveland. Behind the thunderous voice that earned him the title crowned King of Gospel was a man whose deepest truth lived only in whispers and shadows. James Cleveland's fingers could summon pure magic from the piano, and his voice could shake church rafters across the nation, but the fullness of who he was never reached the public eye. Born in Depression-era Chicago, Cleveland didn't just sing gospel, he transformed it. With bold, daring harmonies and groundbreaking arrangements, he forever changed the way the world experienced spiritual music. His 1962 masterpiece Peace Be Still, recorded with the Angelic Choir, sold millions, proving gospel could soar far beyond the walls of any church. He was a visionary, the founder of the Gospel Music Workshop of America, a mentor to legends like Aretha Franklin, and a man whose influence shaped generations. Yet behind the accolades and the adoration, Cleveland carried a private burden. Though he never spoke publicly about his sexuality, those close to him knew of his relationships with men. When he passed in 1991 from AIDS-related complications, the truth he never shared became part of his legacy, a silent testimony to the painful contradictions faced by LGBTQ+ individuals in religious spaces. His music offered liberation, joy, and spiritual ecstasy to millions. Yet Cleveland himself never truly knew the freedom to live openly as his whole, authentic self. Sister Rosetta Tharp. Long before electric guitars ruled the stage, a woman in flowing dresses and sensible shoes strapped on a Gibson SG and made it roar with holy fire. Sister Rosetta Tharp didn't just play music, she shattered boundaries. With fearless innovation, her fingers danced across the strings with such brilliance that even her male contemporaries stood in awe. She became the secret spark that would ignite generations, inspiring legends from Elvis Presley to Johnny Cash. Born in Cotton Plant, Arkansas, to parents who picked cotton by day and sang praises by night, Tharp refused to be confined by labels. She dragged the pulsing rhythms of the church into nightclubs and concert halls, creating the blueprint for what would become rock and roll. In 1945, her groundbreaking hit Strange Things Happening Every Day made her the first gospel artist to cross over to the R&B charts, blurring lines between sacred and secular in a way no one had dared before. Her boldness didn't stop with her music. Though she married men, Tharp shared a deep, years-long romantic and professional partnership with fellow singer Marie Knight, a bond cloaked in the language of friendship, yet unmistakable to those who knew them. And in true Rosetta fashion, even her personal life became a performance. In 1951, she staged a public wedding concert at Washington, D.C.'s Griffith Stadium, where 25,000 paying fans watched her say, "I do," to her third husband. Sister Rosetta Tharp lived like she played, finding freedom within structure, defying every rule while working within the lines just enough to make her art undeniable. Her legacy is a reminder that the roots of rock and roll, and much of modern popular music, trace back to a queer black woman whose spirit could not be contained by identity, gender, or genre. She didn't just play the guitar. She set it on fire. Billy Preston. They called Billy Preston the fifth Beatle, and for good reason. Those lightning-fast fingers could make a keyboard sing, pouring soul-stirring magic into classics like Get Back and later his own unforgettable hits, Nothing from Nothing and Will It Go Round in Circles. With his radiant smile and towering afro, he was instantly recognizable to music lovers around the world. But behind that joyful stage presence was a man locked in an agonizing tug-of-war between faith and identity. Raised in the church from early childhood, Preston's musical genius was evident by age 3. By his early teens, he was already performing alongside gospel greats like Mahalia Jackson and James Cleveland. His faith was the bedrock of his life, even as his career branched into rock, R&B, and funk. Yet at the heart of Billy Preston's journey lay a painful contradiction: his sexuality, which clashed with the strict religious teachings he'd been brought up to cherish. During the height of his fame, he never publicly came out. But later, he acknowledged being gay, even as he continued to wrestle with what that meant for his soul. That inner turmoil fueled battles with substance abuse and legal troubles that shadowed his later years. "I was trying not to be who I was," he once admitted, a haunting reflection of decades spent hiding from himself. The heartbreaking irony was that his music gave millions of people pure joy and freedom, yet he struggled to taste that same liberation in his own life. In his 1979 autobiography, That's the Way God Planned It, Preston hinted at a quiet revelation, the possibility that his authentic self had never been a mistake in the eyes of God after all. Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax. Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax possessed a spine-tingling high tenor that could slice through the richest gospel harmonies and soar straight into the soul. In the 1940s and 50s, his voice became a beacon in the world of gospel quartets, first electrifying audiences with the legendary Five Blind Boys of Mississippi, then leading his own group to national acclaim. Barely over 5 feet tall, hence the nickname Little Axe, Broadnax compensated for his small frame with a voice of staggering power, a sound that could lift congregations to their feet and leave crowds breathless. His recordings, spanning decades, are still cherished as gospel treasures by fans and historians alike. Yet behind the music lay a truth so extraordinary that it would remain hidden for his entire life. Broadnax was a transgender man, living stealth in an era when such an identity was rarely spoken of, let alone accepted. Born female but living as male from early adulthood, he navigated the fiercely masculine, deeply religious world of gospel music without ever revealing his assigned gender at birth. This truth only emerged in 1992, after his death, when medical examiners made the discovery. In a time before the language and understanding of transgender identity existed in the mainstream, Broadnax already knew exactly who he was, and he built his entire adult life and career around that truth. To live authentically, quietly, and fearlessly in mid-20th century America, especially within the conservative world of church music, required not only remarkable determination, but a profound courage that still resonates today. Marsha Stevens. In 1969, a teenage girl named Marsha Stevens picked up a pen and wrote a simple, heartfelt chorus, one that would go on to become one of the most beloved worship songs in modern Christian history. For those tears I died spoke of coming to Jesus just as you are, of finding acceptance and unconditional love. No one could have imagined how prophetic those words would be in her own life. A decade later, Stevens would face the ultimate test of that message. In 1979, she came out as a lesbian, and the same Christian community that had embraced her music turned on her almost overnight. As the founder of Children of the Day, widely considered the first contemporary Christian music group, Marsha had helped pioneer an entirely new style of worship, blending folk rock with faith, breaking free from the confines of traditional hymns, and bringing fresh, heartfelt storytelling into church music. Her groundbreaking work earned her the unofficial title Mother of Contemporary Christian Music. Which is why the backlash cut so deep. Christian bookstores pulled her albums. Radio stations banned her songs. Former colleagues publicly disowned her. It was as if I had never existed, she would later reflect on how swiftly the Christian music industry tried to erase her. But Marsha refused to walk away from either her faith or her truth. She went on to establish a ministry serving LGBTQ+ Christians, continuing to write worship songs for those who had been made to feel unwelcome in church. Today, performing under the name Marsha Stevens Pino, she still creates music that bridges the supposed divide between spirituality and sexuality, reminding the world that God's love was never meant to come with conditions. Trey Pearson. Trey Pearson, the unmistakable voice that powered the Christian rock band Everyday Sunday to over 250,000 album sales and multiple Dove Award nominations, was living with a secret that threatened to shatter everything he had built. In 2016, with a letter first shared with close friends and family and later published in Ohio's magazine, Trey took the ultimate leap of faith. He came out as gay. "I never wanted to be gay," he wrote, describing years of prayer, fasting, and silent anguish. For more than a decade, he toured Christian venues across the country, leading youth group anthems like Wake Up, and Find Me Tonight. But now, the conversation around him had shifted from music to faith, authenticity, and belonging. The fallout was swift. Festival bookings were canceled, church relationships crumbled, and family life was upended as he navigated co-parenting with his ex-wife. Yet unlike those who came out in decades past, Pearson stepped into a slightly more accepting world, one where allies stood shoulder to shoulder with critics. In 2017, he released Silver Horizon, a raw and vulnerable single that charted the emotional terrain of embracing one's true identity after years of denial. "I've never felt so free," he shared, even as professional setbacks and personal losses mounted. His story captured national attention, with features in the New York Times and appearances on ABC's The View, shedding light on the struggles of LGBTQ+ Christians raised in non-affirming faith traditions. Today, Trey Pearson stands unburdened by secrets. He continues to make music that speaks honestly about his spiritual journey and uses his platform to push for deeper acceptance in faith communities, proving that living your truth is the greatest act of faith there is. Knap. Knap, the soulful, raspy voice that swept up 3 Dove Awards and 2 Grammy nominations, went silent in 2002, leaving the Christian music world stunned. At the very height of her career, the genre's premier female singer-songwriter simply vanished. For 8 long years, fans were left with nothing but questions. Then, in 2010, the mystery broke wide open. Knap had spent her time in Australia, not just recharging, but rediscovering herself and finding love with a woman. The Kansas-born artist, whose raw, rootsy albums Kansas and Lay It Down sold over 1 million copies, never set out to become a reluctant voice for LGBTQ+ Christians. She simply couldn't keep pretending. "I'm just a normal human being dealing with normal, everyday life," she explained as she returned to music and revealed her truth. The same folk rock troubadour whose songs like Undo Me and A Little More had once been staples in youth group devotionals now faced a split audience. Some fans embraced her authenticity. Others condemned her as fallen and deceived. But instead of abandoning her faith, Knap chose a different path. She founded Inside Out Faith, an advocacy group supporting LGBTQ+ people facing religious exclusion. Her music evolved too. Coming out albums Letting Go and Set Me Free widened her lyrical scope while preserving the spiritual depth and unflinching honesty that had always set her apart. "I still have a lot of respect and love for where I came from," she said of her gospel roots and evangelical upbringing. Today, Knap stands at the crossroads of advocacy, artistry, and authentic faith, charting a course far beyond the limits of traditional religious structures. Nicole Serrano. Nicole Serrano's path to self-acceptance has been nothing short of transformative, a journey marked by deep personal struggles and hard-earned growth. Born into a devoutly religious home as the daughter of a pastor, her childhood unfolded within the walls of a Christian church. Faith was the cornerstone of her early years, but so was the quiet, aching conflict between who she was and what she was taught to be. From the outside, she embodied the expectations placed upon her, both as a pastor's child and as a member of a strict, conservative faith community. But inside, Nicole wrestled with a truth she feared would never be accepted: her sexuality. The weight of those unspoken battles followed her for years, shaping her with both resilience and pain. As she stepped into adulthood, something shifted. She realized she could no longer live a life ruled by fear, shame, and the constant need to hide. "I'm a lot more enjoyable now because I don't hate myself," she admits with a small laugh. A laugh that carries the relief of finally living authentically. Embracing her identity as a lesbian wasn't without its challenges. The fear of rejection from her family and community was, at times, almost unbearable. Yet, in choosing honesty over approval, Nicole found the peace she had been searching for all her life. Today, she stands unafraid, rooted in her truth, unapologetically herself, and living proof that the freedom to be who you are is worth every battle it takes to claim it. Julian Baker. Long before her name lit up festival lineups beside indie rock royalty, the soundtrack of Julian Baker's life was shaped by church hymns and Christian rock. Born and raised in Tennessee, her haunting voice, capable of shifting from a fragile whisper to a room-filling force in a single breath, first found its wings in youth group worship bands and church choirs. But beneath the harmonies was a quiet storm, a young queer woman trying to reconcile her identity with a faith that told her it was wrong. Growing up in Memphis in a deeply religious family, Baker absorbed the language, cadence, and certainty of evangelical Christianity, even as she wrestled with a truth she had been taught to hide. It was this weird dissonance of knowing I'm gay, but also being at church 3 times a week, she would later recall. Unlike many who walked away from religion entirely, Baker chose a more nuanced road, holding on to her spiritual roots while embracing her authentic self. This tension fuels the raw power of albums like Sprained Ankle and Turn Out the Lights, where lyrics often read like unfiltered prayers, pleading, questioning, and aching in equal measure. In Appointments, she sings, "God, I want to go home," a line that echoes like a confession for countless LGBTQ+ people raised in faith traditions that struggle to embrace them. Though her sound belongs to the indie rock world, Baker's music still carries gospel's emotional urgency and theological wrestling. As a founding member of the supergroup Boy Genius, alongside Phoebe Bridgers and Lucy Dacus, she continues building what feels like sonic cathedrals. Spaces where doubt and belief can sit side by side, where queerness and spirituality aren't enemies, and where listeners with similar journeys find a rare reflection of their own complex truths. Grace Baldridge. Grace Baldridge's story cracked wide open in February 2021, when an unassuming EP titled Preacher's Kid quietly appeared on streaming platforms, and then did the unthinkable. Without a label, radio play, or industry muscle, it shot straight to #1 on the iTunes Christian music charts. Behind those raw, unvarnished songs about growing up queer in evangelical spaces was Baldridge, performing under the name Semler. Its chart-topping success was nothing short of an earthquake in an industry built on tightly guarded theological boundaries. The child of an Episcopal priest, Baldridge grew up immersed in church life, all while slowly sensing a painful disconnect between Christianity's promise of unconditional love and the conditional acceptance so often shown to LGBTQ+ people. "I've been scared my whole life," Semler sings in the EP's haunting title track, capturing the fear that countless queer kids in religious homes know too well. But instead of walking away from faith entirely, Baldridge carved out a place inside Christian music, writing songs that speak directly to those caught between their spiritual roots and their authentic selves. "Jesus, I'm trying to get this right," another lyric pleads, giving voice to the kind of sincere spiritual searching so often erased from mainstream narratives about LGBTQ Christians. The record's unprecedented success ignited both celebration and controversy. Some traditional Christian outlets refused to acknowledge it, while others recognized its seismic significance. An openly queer artist, unapologetically topping the Christian charts. Since that breakthrough, Semler has continued to release music that dares to bridge what many see as an impossible divide, merging explicit Christian faith with unapologetic queerness. Tracks like Youth Group and Late Bloomer serve as both time capsules of evangelical culture and healing balms for those scarred by religious rejection. In doing so, Semler is crafting what might be called a new kind of gospel, one for everyone who has ever been told they don't belong. Carl Bean. Carl Bean, the commanding voice that would one day lead thousands in affirming worship, first captured national attention not in the pulpit, but on the dance floor. In 1977, Motown released his fearless anthem I Was Born This Way, a disco-powered declaration of gay liberation that dared to blend joy, defiance, and divine self-acceptance at a time when such words could cost you everything. Bean's life was an extraordinary odyssey, from a church choir boy in Baltimore to a chart-topping disco hitmaker, and ultimately, to a groundbreaking archbishop who redefined what it meant to belong in God's house. Born into the deep traditions of the Black church, young Carl absorbed the soulful rhythms, fiery sermons, and heartfelt testimonies of his community. His extraordinary voice quickly found a home in respected gospel groups like the Gospel Wonders and the Alex Bradford Singers. Yet, within those sacred spaces, his authentic self remained carefully hidden. A move to Los Angeles opened the door to something radical. In the studio, Bean recorded I Was Born This Way, a bold, unapologetic proclamation that being gay was not a sin but a divine gift. "I'm happy, I'm carefree, and I'm gay," he sang, not as a confession, but as a coronation. That musical coming out became a spiritual liberation, ultimately guiding him back to faith, but on entirely new terms. In 1982, at the height of the AIDS crisis, Bean founded the Unity Fellowship Church movement, a spiritual home built to welcome Black LGBTQ+ people with open arms when most church doors were slammed shut. Its core message was simple, radical, and unshakable: God is love, and love is for everyone. Ordained as Archbishop, Bean spent decades building congregations across America, blending the soaring worship style of the Black church with a fully affirming theology that rejected homophobia outright. He also championed AIDS service organizations and advocacy programs, turning faith into action for the most marginalized. Carl Bean's ministry was nothing less than revolutionary, preserving the soul-stirring music, fellowship, and power of Black church traditions, while stripping away the condemnation that had long kept so many from God's embrace. Through his life's work, he transformed rejection into revival, and shame into a song of liberation that still echoes today. John Holiday. John Holiday possesses a voice that seems to defy the very laws of nature, soaring effortlessly to shimmering soprano heights with crystal clarity, then plunging to resonant baritone depths with commanding power. All of it flows from the same astonishing instrument: one human being. His gift first revealed itself in the youth choir of his grandmother's Pentecostal church in Texas. Even as a boy, his range and emotional fire stopped people in their tracks. Though later schooled at the highest levels of classical operatic training, Holliday's soul remains anchored in the gospel roots that shaped his earliest expressions of faith and music. "Gospel never leaves you," he has said, a truth that colors everything he sings, whether opera, jazz, or pop. But Holliday's rise to artistic acclaim unfolded alongside a deeply personal journey toward living authentically as a gay man raised in a conservative religious world. Unlike many with similar beginnings, he has managed to embrace both his faith and his identity without compromise. "I believe God made me exactly as I am," he has shared. "I honor that creation by living authentically." Mainstream audiences discovered him in a blaze of glory during NBC's The Voice in 2020. His breathtaking performance of Ella Fitzgerald's "Misty" moved John Legend to declare it one of the best vocals I've ever heard on this show. What few realized was that the technical brilliance behind that performance was built on a gospel foundation, a well of spiritual expression that still shapes every note. Today, Holliday's career spans the world's great opera houses, collaborations with major orchestras, and genre-crossing performances. Yet he remains tied to the church, returning often to sing in sacred spaces and record spiritual music. His ability to move seamlessly between the sacred and the secular, without leaving pieces of himself behind, offers a powerful vision for the future of gospel traditions and LGBTQ+ expression. John Holliday stands as living proof that extraordinary talent is only amplified by authenticity. Marie Knight. Behind every legendary icon is often someone just as vital, yet destined to live in the footnotes of history. For Sister Rosetta Tharp, that person was Marie Knight, a powerhouse contralto whose voice and presence helped elevate Tharp to immortal status. Born in Florida and raised in the fervent atmosphere of Newark's Pentecostal churches, Knight honed her gospel skills until they were razor-sharp. In 1946, while performing at a Mahalia Jackson concert, fate intervened. Rosetta Tharp heard her sing and instantly recognized a kindred spirit. "Get that girl," Tharp reportedly told her manager. From that moment, the two created pure musical magic. Their 1948 hit, "Up Above My Head," showcased a chemistry so perfect it seemed heaven-sent, Knight's rich, earthy tones grounding Tharp's soaring improvisations and blazing guitar. Together, they became the most celebrated gospel act of the late 1940s, touring endlessly and cutting timeless tracks for Decca Records. But beyond the pulpit and stage lights was a more intimate, unspoken truth. In an era bound by rigid gender roles and suffocating moral codes, Tharp and Knight's deep connection is believed to have blossomed into a romantic relationship, one carefully hidden behind meticulously crafted public personas. Their professional paths eventually diverged, with Knight pursuing solo success through R&B gems like Come Tomorrow while still staying rooted in gospel. But life dealt her devastating blows. In the years that followed, she endured the unimaginable loss of her children and mother in a house fire, a tragedy that drove her into seclusion before she found her way back to the music that had always sustained her. Through it all, Knight never spoke publicly about her sexuality or the nature of her bond with Tharp, a silence shaped by the era's fierce homophobia and the added scrutiny placed on women in sacred music. Yet her voice, her presence, and her quiet resilience remain an indelible part of gospel history. Proof that sometimes, the greatest stories are the ones still partly untold.